The Bloc Québécois is calling for banks to reimburse customers who are victims of fraud, with reported fraud surpassing $500 million in the first 9 months of 2025. Our next guest believes this amendment would create a stronger incentive for banks to prevent it. To break this all down, we're joined by Sara Eve Levac, a lawyer at Option Consommateurs. Sara Eve, thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You like what the Bloc Québécois is pushing. What do you like about it?
So, as you said, it's an amendment that would create a stronger incentives for banks to have protective measures in cases of fraud. It limits the liability of consumers who are victims of fraud to $50, and it limits their liability, once they have informed the bank of the fraud in their account. And it's also providing some protections if ever a consumer has initiated a payment following a scam or given some information following a sophisticated scams to a fraudster.
And how much of this is on the bank and how much is on the consumer themselves? Like, how would they be able to draw a line on who's at fault for this?
Yes, so the bank would have to reimburse unless the consumer has been grossly negligent, or in Quebec, a gross fault. And this standard is a standard that is already put in place in the Bank Act in cases of fraud on your credit cards. So it would be then applied to your bank account now, because there is no legal protection on frauds in your bank account. And this resembles also the system put in place in the United Kingdom, where the banks have to reimburse the consumers unless they have been grossly negligent in the scam.
And what would define grossly negligent? Like, when would you be at fault for what happened?
Yes, so it's in the UK, it's a high degree of carelessness. So if you've been informed by your bank, for example, that you have suspicious transactions, or if you've given if you have been if you've been informed that the fraud, that this seems like a scam, and you're still going forward with the transaction, you might be grossly negligent, but it's a high degree of carelessness in those cases.
Like at my bank now, I get a note that says, when you're doing an e-transfer, do you trust this sender? I guess they read what the email address is. If I say, yeah, I know, and I'm sending the money anyways, would that then put me into grossly negligent?
We do not think so, because in certain circumstances, the fraudsters are have a very sophisticated scam. We've seen people being called by fake representatives, so fraudsters that would say they are working for the bank of the consumer. The caller ID would have the name of the bank, and the fraudster would have information on recent transactions in the consumer's bank account. In our view, these are sophisticated scams where even a diligent consumer would fall victim, or would be would maybe incented to give some personal information or to complete a transaction with the fraudster on the phone. And in our case, these consumers are not grossly negligent. They're victim of a very sophisticated fraud.
Now, is the system in the UK working? Is it reducing fraud?
So the system in the UK has been put in place in 2024. Within 1 year, the number of frauds has been reported as decreased from 15% by 15%. Sorry. So they have seen in the UK, the regulator has said that the system put in place has actually reduced the number of frauds in the United Kingdom.
Now, does that say that the banks here aren't doing a good enough job, or that they could be doing more?
Well, it's our view. Most banks will normally have a system put in place to prevent some frauds. But in circumstances where consumers call us, sometimes they will call the bank within minutes after the call ended with the fraudster, sensing that something is amiss. And then the bank will say that there is no way to get reimbursed after that. We've had circumstances where consumers have gone to their branch to withdraw a large amount of money, thousands of dollars, and this has not raised any red flags. So the new regulation, if it's adopted, it would put a strong incentives on banks to have better protections for consumers in cases of fraud.
And I mean, there is incentive, I guess, if you're going to have to pay $645 million, that affects the bottom line.
Yes, but right now consumers would largely bear the brunt in the cost of fraud. So as you mentioned, it's cost Canadians $645 million last year in cases of fraud. And we are suggesting to have a little bit more fairness in the system where banks will have a liability as well in cases of fraud.
And with AI, is there more that needs to be done? Would you like to see more added to this bill?
That's a good question. We haven't looked at it. We know that Bill C-27 a couple of years back was putting in place a system with AI. Remains to be seen if this type of law, a new bill would be put in place to have a better legislative framework for AI.
And I mean, and just quickly before we go, the $645 million that's reported. How bad is fraud? I mean, that's obviously not everybody reporting it because a lot of people are embarrassed.
No, it's estimated that this is only the tip of the iceberg, and that between 5 to 10% of people will report fraud. So the number we have of 645 million is really just a small portion of the actual frauds that are occurring in Canada.
So it's in the billions. Okay, Sara Eve, thank you very much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
It was a pleasure.
Sara Eve Levac, a lawyer at Option Consommateurs.